Molly, what's happening? What's changed?
Yeah, so this is significant, I think, with the context in that we knew that Harry was determined originally in wanting to bring Meghan and his two children on this trip with him, despite reportedly having these concerns around how they would be protected. And the latest now, as you say, we understand that he will not. So Meghan, Archie and Lily will not be travelling with Harry when he comes to London next week, but with potentially an important caveat in that there's a couple of parts to this five-day trip. Some of it will be spent in London. We're expecting a ruling this week on his legal action against the publisher of the Mail newspaper in London. That's expected, so he'll be expected to be attending that in some form. And then he's also here to mark celebrations around the Invictus Games in Birmingham. So I say it's a caveat because it's not clear, for example, whether they could join him outside of London, whether they could perhaps stay in a royal residence outside of London. It's not clear whether they could be on part of the trip, just not perhaps in the London part. But it's significant, I think, for a couple of reasons. One, on a family level, his two grandchildren haven't seen their grandfather, the king, in over 4 years, and there's been lots of speculation about when that would happen. Would this trip be the moment for that to happen? And then two, of course, there's been this ongoing row over Prince Harry's security more broadly. There were reports last week that he lost this request for police protection on this trip, that request had been turned down, that only adding to what has been years, really, of this ongoing row over his security. He lost that battle with the government last year over his security in the UK after it was downgraded when he stepped down as a working royal. So that's the kind of context here.
And his argument has always been that he inherited the risk through his birth and therefore that's why it should be funded. But that's clearly not how things have panned out in the courts.
Yeah, exactly that. And that's not the position of the government either. So that's why I guess he lost that battle. He is still expecting a review to come back. It's not clear when that review will come back about some of his royal protection kind of elements. But that's the kind of context, that's the backdrop. But the breaking news that the Duchess of Sussex and their children will not be joining Harry on this trip, or at least the London part for now, expected next week.
Squaddies, we need to talk, because something just dropped that tells you everything you need to know about how this institution operates. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you're going to see the pattern so clearly you won't be able to unsee it. Prince Harry is coming to London alone. No Meghan, no Archie, no Lilibet. And before you go thinking, oh, that's just a scheduling thing, no. Sit with me for a second, because the reason why matters more than the trip itself. This isn't about a 5-day visit. This is about a security fight that has been dragging on for years, a family that has been kept apart on purpose, and a media machine that is once again trying to spin abandonment into some kind of royal soap opera. Let's get into it. So here's what we actually know. Harry is heading to London for about 5 days. Part of that trip ties into a legal case. He's got a ruling expected against one of the tabloid publishers he's been going after for years, and if you've followed this channel for any length of time, you know Harry doesn't file these cases for fun. He's been dismantling the UK tabloid industry one courtroom at a time, and every single time he wins something. Settlements, apologies, admissions of wrongdoing, receipts, squaddies, actual legal on-the-record receipts. The second half of the trip is about the Invictus Games anniversary, a project Harry built from nothing that has changed the lives of wounded, injured and sick servicemen and women across the world. Not a title, not a birthright, something he actually built with his own hands and his own reputation after the institution stripped him of nearly everything else. So that's the what. Legal accountability and a global charity he created. Not exactly scandalous stuff. But here's the part the press wants you to focus on instead. The fact that his wife and children aren't coming with him. And that's where this story stops being about a trip and starts being about something much colder. Let's rewind, because context is everything here. And the UK media loves to strip context out of every single Sussex story they touch. When Harry and Meghan stepped back from royal duties, his personal protection, the armed police security that had covered him literally since birth, was downgraded, not adjusted, not reviewed and quietly restored. Downgraded in a decision made behind closed doors by a committee most people in Britain had never even heard of before this saga started. Harry took it to court. His argument was simple, and honestly, it's hard to argue with the logic. He was born into this level of risk. He didn't choose to be the son of the future king. He didn't choose to have his face plastered across every front page in Britain since the day he arrived. That risk was inherited the moment he was born, and threats don't disappear just because you resign from an institution. If anything, stepping outside the protective bubble of the firm arguably makes you a more exposed target, not a less relevant one. He lost that case. The government's position won out in the courts, and here we are, still watching this play out, because reports now suggest he's also been denied additional police protection, specifically for this UK visit. Denied. Again. While a review into his broader security situation is apparently still ongoing, with no clear timeline for when or if it wraps up. So ask yourself the question the UK press conveniently skips. If a father doesn't feel confident that his wife and 2 young children will be adequately protected on British soil, what exactly is he supposed to do? Roll the dice with his family's safety for the sake of good PR? Or make the responsible, protective, honestly pretty obvious decision to leave them somewhere safe while he handles the parts of the trip he can't avoid? Because that's what this is, squaddies. This isn't Meghan snubbing the UK. This isn't some rift story. This is a father making a security call in a country that has spent years making it as difficult as possible for his family to feel safe in it. And here's the part that should actually make people uncomfortable, instead of just being fodder for headlines. 2 young children have not seen their grandfather in over 4 years. 4 years. Let that sink in for a second. Whatever you think about the politics of this family, whatever side of the royal soap opera you land on, that's not a headline. That's a childhood happening in real time. Archie and Lilibet are growing up without a relationship with their grandfather, the King of England. Not because anyone in that little family chose distance, but because of a security and access standoff that the institution itself has never fully resolved. And that's the part the tabloids don't want to sit with, because it doesn't fit the narrative they've built. It's so much easier to run headlines about tension and snubs than to actually ask the harder question, why has it taken this long and this much legal fighting for a father to get basic clarity on whether his children can safely visit family in the country of their father's birth? If this was any other family, literally any other family, being denied that kind of access to their own grandchildren for 4 years would be treated as a genuine tragedy. But because it's Harry, because it's the Sussexes, it gets flattened into a gossip story about who is or isn't getting on a plane. And speaking of flattening things into gossip, let's talk about how this story is actually being covered, because this is where the tabloid machine really shows its hand. Notice the framing. It's never father forced to leave his family behind due to an unresolved security crisis that the government itself created. It's Meghan won't be joining Harry. It's always about Meghan. It's always an implied choice, an implied absence, an implied what is she doing instead? As if a mother staying home to keep her children safe is somehow the scandal instead of the actual scandal, which is that the safety of the Duke of Sussex's family on British soil is apparently still up for debate, years into this. Compare that, for a second, to how security concerns are covered for other members of this family. When protection arrangements are made, quietly, generously, without controversy, for other royals, you don't get 5-day news cycles about it. You don't get panel discussions questioning their commitment to the country. But the second it's Harry, suddenly it's a story about excuses, about drama, about a couple who supposedly can't stop making everything about themselves, even when, in this exact situation, they are doing the opposite. They're staying quiet, they're not commenting, they're just making a protective parenting decision and letting the trip go ahead regardless. That's not a couple courting controversy. That's a couple absorbing controversy that was manufactured for them, because manufactured controversy sells papers and actual context doesn't. Here's the bigger picture, squaddies. This isn't just a story about one trip. It's a case study in how this entire dynamic has worked for years now. Step 1. The institution creates a situation, in this case downgrading security with no clear path back. Step 2. Harry and Meghan respond in the only reasonable way available to them, legally, quietly, protectively. Step 3. The UK media takes that reasonable response and reframes it as drama, distance, or dysfunction. And step 4, the part that really gets me. The very people who created the situation in the first place get to sit back while the tabloids do the dirty work of making it look like it's the Sussex's fault. It is an incredibly effective cycle if your goal is to keep public sympathy away from Harry and Meghan. It is a devastating cycle if you're actually two parents just trying to figure out how to see family while keeping your kids safe. And that's really the tragedy underneath all of this. Strip away the palace politics, strip away the tabloid spin, and what you're left with is a young family that just wants basic clarity and basic safety. And an institution that 4 years on still hasn't given them either. So here's where things stand. Harry's heading to London for legal business and for Invictus. Meghan and the kids are staying back, almost certainly for their safety, in a country that still hasn't sorted out his protection after all this time. And once again, the framing in the mainstream press will do everything it can to make this look like anything other than what it actually is. You know the drill by now, squaddies. Question the framing, follow the actual facts, and don't let anyone tell you a father protecting his children is a scandal. If this video helped you see through the spin, do me a favour. Hit subscribe, tap that notification bell, and drop a comment telling me what part of this story the mainstream media keeps getting wrong. This channel exists because of this community, and every single one of you sharing these videos is what keeps this conversation going. So thank you for being here, thank you for being a squaddie, and I will see you in the next one.